Okay, I want to talk about inadvertent interaction. What is that? Well, the easiest way to understand it is to look at this picture. It's a woman playing in a high-stakes poker tournament. My question is, why is she dressed that way? And I think the answer is fairly clear if you know anything about poker, which is she's trying to hide all of the subtle signals that we all normally give off. A sudden smile, a change in posture, a change in your eyes. All of this stuff gives away information about your cognitive state. It's what poker players call tells, because it tells the other players what's in your mind. And those are almost impossible to inhibit. So instead of inhibiting them, you cover them up. And if you watch poker tournaments on television, you'll see almost everybody is dressed this way. Now, I think if that information is really all that valuable and informative, why aren't we making use of it in human-computer interaction? The fact that she has to cover up so much tells us that it's really worth a lot. Why don't we get the computer to understand some of that? If we can do it, I think we get lots of interesting advantages. In particular, I think it gives us the basis for a new model of human-computer interaction, a much richer model. And as I'll show you, it also gives us a new way to measure cognitive health. To take the issue of a new level of human-computer interaction, consider this. This is the way we all got started with human-computer interaction. You wanted to make something happen, you go over to the computer, you press a button, you use the mouse, and something happens. Pretty soon, people began to understand that human-to-human communication is much more fluid than that, in part because we have shared knowledge. So we don't have to be absolutely explicit about everything. And in fact, there's a model that looks like this. If we and the computer share a body of knowledge, we can use that to make implicit conclusions. We can use that to make conclusions that fill in some of the missing points in what somebody just said. I think we're ready for the next stage, which is to take all of these inadvertent signals that we're giving off, the look in your eyes, the sound of your voice, your posture, and give the machine an understanding of human behavior enough that it can then take advantage of that inadvertent information that's flying around. I think that would make our systems considerably more powerful. To illustrate this a little more concretely, let me show you an experiment that one of my students did a couple of years ago with eye tracking and a tablet computer. He had a bunch of volunteers wear eye trackers and work on a tablet with a stylus in some very simple drawing tasks. For instance, this task was take the stylus and draw a line from the upper left where that square is to the bottom middle where the circle is. Then there was maximize. Put the stylus at the upper left, and as you drag it down, a square gets bigger and bigger. Make it as big as you can. And then there was essentially the reverse of that, minimize the square. Now, the interesting thing he did was to measure the distance between where the subject was looking on the tablet and where the stylus was. Here's what that data looks like. And we don't have to go into too much detail here, except to say the interesting thing is that these patterns are almost all different, which means that within about a half a second, we can tell what the person was trying to do without ever looking at what they're doing, just by watching their eyes. That gives us information about what they're up to. And that's very valuable. Now, where you're looking is just one kind of information we can get from your eyes. In addition, we can look at the fixations, that is, the pauses that your eyes make at various places in the scene. There are things called saccades, which is when your eyes flick from one fixation to the next. There are blink rates, how often you're blinking. And then there's pupil size. That one's one of my favorite because it turns out that pupil size is proportional to cognitive load. When you're thinking really hard, your pupils get bigger. If you're trying to remember something, if you're trying to work out a puzzle, your pupils dilate. And very quickly, when you remember the thing you were after, they go back to normal size again. So the poets have said, the eyes are the window into the soul. I don't know about that, but they're a window into your cognition. They're a window into what you're thinking about at the moment, and that can be extremely valuable. Now, there's lots of inadvertent signals we can take advantage of. We can track the position of your head, not just your eyes, so we know where you're looking. We can consider prosody. How does your voice sound? Are you getting lower or higher? What's going on? We don't even have to understand the speech. There's lots of qualities of speech that are informative. There's body pose. Are you looking slumped or confident? There's information in that. There's micro expressions. Then there's the wearables that are around these days. There's all sorts of information we can get from people. What can we do with that? Well, I think first of all, we can develop a better model of human-computer interaction. I'd like our systems to be the same in spirit as a really good poker player. That is, they can read you. They can make some sense of, make some reasonable inferences about your intentions and your plans and your goals, so you don't have to be explicit. It can figure out what you're up to. That would be very valuable. Here's a paper from several years ago that one of my students and I wrote that was a first step in that direction. Now, the other thing that we discovered is that these inadvertent signals are very sensitive indicators of cognitive health. And that's really quite remarkable. Let's see, why does that matter? Why do we worry about cognitive health? See, the problem these days is that everybody's living longer. What happened is that we made enormous progress in the past several decades on the three main causes of mortality: cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. People around the world are routinely living much longer. That's the good news. The not so good news is they get old enough to get the cognitive decline that comes with age routinely. So various forms of dementia, of which Alzheimer's is probably the most well known. Just to give you some facts and figures, in 2018, there were 50 million people around the world estimated as having dementia. The projected direct healthcare costs are about $1 trillion. That's the direct cost. It doesn't factor in family and friends who have sometimes quit their jobs to help take care of the subjects. It might be 82 million cases by 2030, which is now just about 6 years away. The cost then will be $2 trillion. See, it adds up to real money eventually. So, what we're doing is developing tests that use inadvertent interaction to understand the state of your mind and the health of your thinking. Here's an example. This is a test called the symbol digit test. Across the top of the paper form, you see there's a bunch of simple geometric figures. Underneath each figure, there are some numbers. The green dot has been projected onto the video by the eye tracking system. It shows us where the subject is looking. The subject's job is to fill in all the empty blanks on the bottom half of the page. Now, how do you suppose they dealt with the very first one up there, which is, let's see, I think that's the cross. Yeah. The obvious strategy is you look and see the stimulus, you look up at the key, you find it, and you write down the number. Easy, right? Okay, and that's what you'll see as we do this. I'm going to show this movie, just a brief piece of it. This is slowed down to about 1/5 normal time so that we can see what's happening. Go scan for it, write it down. Go scan for it, write down the answer. Go look for the star. Let's see, where is it? Oh, there it is. There's a number. How about the diamond? Can I find the diamond? There it is. Write down the number. Now watch. No scanning. Triangle, I found it. There. Star. No scanning. Triangle. Oh, I just wrote one of those. Did you see that? We can see what somebody is thinking by where they're moving their eyes. And this information hasn't been available before. What it's revealed to us is all sorts of strategies people use in doing this test. And what we've seen here is two very interesting signs of cognitive health. Namely, with just a few examples, this person learned what number was associated with the rectangle. And this test is in part how many repetitions, how many encounters it takes you to learn the association. The other thing they did was this very clever strategy of saying, hey, wait, I just saw that symbol a couple of boxes ago. I'll go look there. I don't have to go all the way to the top. That's a very clever idea. Okay, so what do we get here? We get explicit actions telling us what a person's doing. That's what they're writing. Interestingly enough, we get their inadvertent actions, namely where they're looking, which gives us a window into what they're thinking. And if we want to measure cognitive health, we want to understand what people are thinking. We want to understand how well they're thinking. And the tests we have developed are helping to make that possible. So, some observations. These inadvertent interactions give us a new foundation for cognitive testing. It's non-invasive, takes less than 10 minutes. It's actually proven to be more sensitive to early cognitive decline than existing tests. And capturing these things early is very important because the earlier you capture them, the earlier you can begin to treat them. And while there are no cures, there are things that will slow down the progress of the disease, and that's important. We actually have one of these that has passed FDA clearance called DCT Clock. It's in use by drug companies around the world, measuring the effectiveness of their new and trial treatments. This application was named one of Time Magazine's Inventions of the Year in 2021. And some subsequent work with it by MGH showed that regional distributions of what are called amyloid and tau, two proteins that may be the source of cognitive decline, it could even give us suggestions about where in the brain those things were piling up just from doing this drawing test. You don't have to do those really expensive PET imaging tests or MRIs. So what we've got here are new tests, and we are undertaking a new tablet-based platform. We're developing additional tests. This is joint work with Leahy Medical Center in Burlington. We think it's terribly exciting, and even though we've been at it for several years, we feel like we're just getting started, and there's really exciting things here. Thank you very much.